If you've been wondering whether March really changes anything in the housing market, you're not alone. A lot of people start to feel a shift this time of year. Early spring has a different energy, more activity, more conversations, and more people beginning to think about moving again. But here's the important part. March doesn't actually create change on its own. What it usually does is bring more people back into the market. And that difference matters more than most people realize. Here in our local market, what tends to happen in March is pretty predictable. More homes start coming online. Homeowners who pause their plans during the winter begin preparing again as the weather improves and the days get longer. Families hoping to move between school years start getting into position too. So yes, listings increase, but that's a normal seasonal pattern, not a sudden shift in the market. What really matters isn't just how many new listings appear, it's the balance between supply and demand. If new homes hit the market and buyers absorb them at roughly the same pace, prices can remain fairly steady. But if listings begin to outpace buyer activity, that's when leverage starts to shift. March itself doesn't determine that balance. It simply brings more players onto the field. Next week, when we look at the February numbers, we'll have a much clearer sense of how quickly new inventory is being absorbed. And that tells us far more than the calendar ever could. Mortgage rates are another important part of this conversation. Over the past couple of years, volatility created hesitation because monthly payments could change drastically between the time you started house hunting and when you actually found your home. Recently, though, volatility has narrowed. Rates are no longer historically low, but they've been more stable, and they're still below long-term historical averages. In practical terms, that stability helps buyers plan with more confidence. When payments feel predictable, people tend to adjust more comfortably. Stability reduces some of the friction and makes decisions feel more manageable. There's also a psychological shift that happens around March. After a quiet winter, early spring often feels like a natural time to revisit plans that were put on hold. Conversations that paused in December start up again. That doesn't mean you should move just because it's spring. It simply means the conversation becomes easier to have. The more important question isn't whether the season says it's time. It's whether you feel clear about your own direction, your equity position, your lifestyle needs, your comfort with current rates, and your long-term financial plans. Those factors matter far more than the calendar. All in all, March typically brings more activity, more listings, more showings, and more conversations. But the underlying forces, supply, absorption, and rate stability, move more gradually. And when you separate normal seasonal patterns from the deeper market fundamentals, the housing market tends to feel less dramatic and a lot more understandable. All details are in this week's Market Pulse Weekly blog. You'll find a link in the description below.